Most of the time, the fleet owner doesn't want to be that owner. They feel that bringing in spy cam, big brother, if it goes all the way to settlement and trial, 70% of the time they get blamed. Something interesting happens. About 3 months later, people start snapping into their old habits again. It's like when you get into a rental car, you just feel free to just hit the gas really hard, hit the brake. This platform, this technology is like a silent passenger in the vehicle. Probably that savings alone just pays for the solution itself. It is truly not just about the tracking. It's about transforming operations in real time.
Chris, one of the things that we have in tech is we have lots of solutions with no problems, and you hear all these like bombastic statements and like, oh, this technology is going to revolutionize everything, but it never really. A lot of times it doesn't connect, and you can see corporate marketing dollars get invested in these things. I'm not gonna call people out by name, even though I really am desperately wanting to. 5G and edge computing, but I feel like is misunderstood. Really comes into what's available now in fleet monitoring and telematics, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. But if you could start and um, give me a quick background. We're going to talk about a fleet, a lot of vehicles, a company, and what was going on with them and how you fixed it.
Absolutely, Max. Thank you so much. So, a lot of times we talk to fleet customers and we expect that they have the same problems around fleet management inefficiencies or maintenance issues or basic compliance issues around drivers with location, making sure they're at the right place at the right time. But what happened slowly in the marketplace was the ability for a fleet telematics solution to affect the frequency and cost of accidents and claims with the safety technology and the innovations and the evolution of the technology to include video. So, working with a customer, we had a specific customer who came to us by the name of APG Electric, right? And they have probably about 130 vehicles located in the Florida area, and they are in the construction and field services vertical, right? Okay. So, when we came to them and we had asked them, what issues are you experiencing right now? It was, I guess, more anything to me eye-opening at that point about how much that a customer like that was looking for a way to improve driver safety, to reduce operational risk, and really increase accountability across the fleet, right? The leadership was also, of course, looking for a cost-saving opportunity in fuel usage and maintenance, while altogether reinforcing a strong safety culture at the organization. So one of the ways that could be accomplished is with a traditional fleet telematics solution, otherwise known as a GPS tracking solution.
Right. I mean, because you hear all these brandings, I was going to get into this, like IoT is now buzzed and it's like 5G this and like blah, 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 that, GPS tracking solution, right? A little bit simpler, but, fleet telematics, industry term, GPS tracking, for simplification.
Absolutely. And Max, it's all in that umbrella of the IoT. The cool thing about what I do, and I didn't even realize it at the time, it wasn't even called IoT. That's how long I've unfortunately been in the industry. It used to be called machine to machine. And it's the same technology. It's you plug in a device that mobilizes data being captured from a machine and put it into the cloud and give it a portal to give you some visibility and the ability to make some actionable insight, intelligence type of decisions. That's it. Fleet telematics or fleet GPS tracking, whatever you would like to call it, is one of the more mature technologies that are out there. And the company that we were working with, APG, already had a tracking solution, right? But when we were able to speak with them and kind of go through what our technology can employ, and what generally a fleet telematics solution that now includes video, driver behavior monitoring, and coaching, we're able to help check all the boxes for them. So real-time GPS tracking, check. AI-powered dash cams. Yes, the dash cam that every time the driver is eating or drinking or smoking or closing their eyes and falling asleep or looking out the window for too long or picking up their phone and texting, the ability to warn them in real time to correct their action. And then if they don't, then record the video, send it to your manager for a coaching session, right?
So you're running a business, and you go through an insurance policy and you go through your, normal, general liability, professional liability, EPLI, anything, these things, you get into a section around cars, right? Do your employees drive cars? Do they drive your cars? They drive their own cars. And without even getting into a fleet of like owned vehicles, there's already implied risk that comes to the company if a person is driving a car to go to a company thing that then gets into an accident. And when I'm listening to you talk about this and you say 130 vehicles, all of a sudden you get into this thing where it's like, okay, you have 130 heavy moving objects like out in the world that are going around and could each one be a ticking time bomb to you. I mean, how big of a problem is this for a company with a fleet? I mean, here, right, they have 130 trucks, they've got people driving the trucks. Like, how, you've got, like, you're putting somebody in a truck and sending them off into the world and saying, okay, go, don't drive over a kitten now. But what does this actually mean in terms of like risk or occurrences of risk or occurrence of like accidents into a company, for 100 cars? Like, what kind of stats are they dealing with? Are you seeing?
Yeah, you drilled immediately right into the heart of it. When I put myself in the seat of a business owner who owns and operates a commercial fleet, not only is it one of their biggest expenses, it is by far one of their biggest risks. And to your point, they're moving billboards of your business. And the way that the country works from a litigation perspective, and this is unfortunate, only 30% of all accidents, maybe, are the fault of the commercial truck driver or the commercial driver in an accident with a consumer or passenger vehicle. Yet, if it goes all the way to settlement and trial and all that stuff, 70% of the time, right, they get dinged, they get blamed, they get an adverse claim against them. So what can you do, right? What tools can you employ to minimize risk and improve the frequency and cost of accidents and claims, or diminish it, honestly, with a safety technology? That's what we talk to our fleet customers about, because this platform, this technology is like a silent passenger in the vehicle, and it's really one of the only buttons left to press to minimize risk. But it's really, Max, not just the technology and that risk that you so eloquently pointed out that a commercial fleet or a commercial business with a fleet has. It's what technology can you use to help develop a safety culture to eliminate the accident. The last stat I'll leave you with, Max, is we hired at Azuga a third party to come in, and we asked them what our impact was in the fleet industry. And they looked at all of our numbers objectively and looked at our customer data, and they realized that this year alone, Azuga and Bridgestone are going to eliminate 11,000 accidents from ever occurring. Right? So the proof, how do I prove an accident that never occurred? You look at a company's loss runs or the accidents that they had the year before and how many claims they put into their insurance company versus the ones that they did this year. Mm-hmm. When you apply the approximate and very unfortunate 0.71 fatality rate on that 11,000 number, Azuga easily are going to help 100 people in saving their lives this year alone. And that's just Azuga. And we have plenty of competitors. And thankfully in this industry, with the 30 million commercial vehicles, it's about 18 million of them have this technology, right? Not maybe the cameras yet, but at least the GPS. And that's what I wake up in the morning for. That's the impact that I want to make. And that is the impact that we can have on our commercial fleet customers with this technology. What do you think?
So what was So you said APG, you made a note here. APG already had GPS trackers. They already had something in their trucks.
Yeah.
What were they not getting out of their existing trackers that they needed to change?
Yeah, and that was the best part of talking to customers in the year 2025 about fleet IoT.
Mm-hmm.
It's traditionally they have a tracking solution, uh, and that's how the technology started. You install a little box in the vehicle, it has cellular connectivity and it has a GPS chipset in it, and it can tell you where the vehicle is. And there's a lot of things you can do with that. You could do routing more efficiently. You could make sure that when the drivers get to the location they get to, and you put a geofence around that location, you're only paying them for the time they're spending there. So it helps affect payroll and overtime. So that's how it started. And then when you talk to a customer like that, since they implemented it, a few technologies have evolved.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was the accelerometer. The accelerometer, or being a G-force sensor. So the ability to use an accelerometer and pick up G-forces to actually determine things like hard braking, sudden acceleration, hard cornering, and accidents. Right? So what can you do with that data? You could build a driver scorecard. This is something that the company didn't have. And they were able to stack rank their drivers from the best to the ones that need the most coaching using an algorithm of all of that driver behavior data, because the technology evolved to include the G-force sensor. And from there, they were able to obviously have the ability to identify and coach that bottom 20% of drivers, right? And then another feature would be to allow them to see their driver score themselves on their mobile device and gamify that to show them their driver score versus the other drivers. So expose that to the driver. And then you'll see the driver scores rise. And a 10% increase in driver scores, I believe, is a 40% decrease in fleet risk. That's how powerful that was, right? So the coup de grace was the camera. And that changed the game, Max. That was a completely different add-on technology. And that 1-2 combo was the reason why I believe this particular client wanted to move forward with Azuga and realize those benefits.
There's a lot of benefit that comes immediately to the company when you start talking about monitoring. There's a lot of different technologies that go out that help, what's going on in the computer. How do you device management, all these different things. And at the same time, when you start deploying this, you get a certain amount of pushback. There's always a person that's going to be distrustful of it. Of, oh, you put a camera. I mean, now, you talk about camera, right? Like, oh, I'm driving a truck and there's a camera in it. You're spying on me, right? So, I immediately go to these like experiences I've had rolling out different pieces of technology with our clients and having this kind of internal resistance and pushback, and how, in this case, it's a corporate fleet. As part of the employment, you're driving a corporate fleet, right? So there's like a little bit of, this just comes with the job that shows up already. But going from, hey, we've got a GPS tracker to now we're putting, a camera that's watching you full time is a pretty big shift. How do you roll that out without creating, impact your culture and, morale issues and all this other stuff?
Yeah. That right there is the biggest objection that companies who are positioning video telematics platforms need to overcome, right? Most of the time, the fleet owner doesn't want to be that owner. So they feel that bringing in what is considered, if not properly positioned, spy cam, big brother, I've heard it all, right? Video telematics, it's funny. I recall 15 years ago when I first got into the industry, I was working with a municipality in Long Island, New York, and it was the first time a government organization in New York was putting on GPS. And that, I remember how much pushback the unions gave and what that fight was, because it was a privacy infringement. 15 years later, Max, a GPS tracker in a vehicle is complete and total table stakes. And a technician driving a vehicle or a truck driver doesn't even think twice about it, right? But now put it in the world of video, where you have a road-facing video, which for the most part is accepted because that's an exoneration to a driver. But when you're positioning the interior view because you want to be able to measure distracted driving and help eliminate it, that is when we get and see the most pushback as you can probably well imagine, including my own family and myself, as well as a commercial fleet drivers. And honestly, I put myself in their shoes and I don't blame them. However, what we found was and this is the advice I give all of my clients personally, is be very honest, be very upfront. Do not just install this technology and go, surprise, we have a camera in the vehicle now. Make the drivers or the technicians part of the journey, part of the conversation. Get their feedback first, but more importantly, share with them why are you doing this. And it's not because you don't trust your drivers and you're trying to spy on them. It's because literally commercial automotive insurance has increased in price 9 of the past 10 years. That industry has not made money in 9 of the past 10 years. And the reason why is because there's more trucks on the road and more people are driving distracted, right? So what does an insurance company do? No matter what, even if you were a great fleet with 0 claims, they raise you anyway because they have to be sustainable. So that, Max, is what I found to be the most effective means to employ this technology, is really be honest with the driver about why you're doing this. Because in the end, you need to keep this company sustainable. But more importantly, you want to do everything in your power to give that driver the ability to get back home safe to their family that day after work. And this is the technologies that help do that.
I'm thinking through like negatives or objections as you're talking, and of course this like idea of like, oh, you're putting this in to spy on us and like monitor us and track us and all these different things. GPS table stakes, right? But the other one that I wonder about is, if something happens and there is an accident, right? Having video and having telematics and GPS tracking and speed and acceleration and braking, all these sorts of things, can be great to prove it wasn't your fault, but you've also got the potential for the inverse. And how do you deal with that, right? Because now you're also deploying you're deploying technology that can exonerate you or incriminate you, in that incident.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, you bring up another amazing point is you just have a technology that can be subpoenaed, and you could be basically incriminating yourself on an accident that potentially your driver caused because they were being inattentive at that moment or violated some sort of a traffic law of some sort. And to me, it's like taking a medicine to cure some sort of an issue or disease and making sure that the positives vastly outweigh the negatives. So the answer to your question is yes, you are exposing yourself to potential risk. But this is what I tell our customers, and this is what I've seen in real life. Your insurance company would much rather settle that claim with it as soon as they figure out that it's your fault.
Yeah.
They just want to get that off the books. Because if you said it wasn't and it goes into litigation and it gets extended out years, and in the end it gets nuclear verdict versus what they could have settled it for years ago at a fraction of the cost, in the end, that will positively affect a company's loss runs. Because all that is how much premium you paid, how much claims your insurance company paid. If you put in more premium than you got back, you are a positive risk. And even a claim like that can positively affect your loss runs, right? And that's the way that we look at it.
What you're talking about is certainty, right? Even if the outcome is potentially negative, by creating certainty in the process, you can manage it, right? Because you know exactly what you're walking into, right? If you're walking into a good situation or bad situation, whatever it is, having certainty provides, a much easier pathway to resolution. You're a technology company, right? You're not like dictating policy and procedures and legal, for your clients. But when somebody's going to deploy a solution and they're going to say, okay, you're going to gamify driver performance and driver scoring, right? And you're going to have phenomenal drivers, but and you're going to have maybe drivers that need coaching. How do you counsel your fleet customers? I mean, or do you even counsel your fleet customers in terms of what they're looking for in terms of standards? Your driver rating should be above this number, and if it's below this number consistently, maybe that person shouldn't be driving a vehicle on the road. Like, how do people end up using this to make those kind of determinations across their employees?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we can provide guidance. Like to
Mhm.
your point, uh, although we create solutions that are used to allow fleets to be compliant, that's something like the ELD or the hours of service, because a truck driver is really not allowed to drive more than 11 hours in a 14-hour workday. And they have to be mandated to take a break within their first 8 hours of driving. And how do you do that? It used to be paper logs. Now it's technology.
Mhm.
And we're a part of helping fleets be compliant with government mandates. But when it comes to the data that we're capturing, we're capturing this data, and we're turning it into a driver score, and that's honestly subjective, based on what our beliefs are, based on your speeding, your braking, your acceleration, your idling, and things of that nature. So when we're capturing the data and we get a modicum of information about how a vehicle is being driven from a maintenance perspective, or a utilization perspective, or being able to give insights around driver safety, all we could provide is the scoring mechanisms. However, one of the ways to differentiate is to you got to remember, we think we are the coolest technology ever, and you sell software as a service, and you give them a login and a password, and you think they're going to live and breathe inside of your solution.
Mhm.
No, they're going to run their business. So, what can you do to deliver some of these data that you're capturing on a silver platter and make it like a set it and forget it kind of thing? Well, one of the ways that could be accomplished is with a quarterly business report to take the data and to visualize it for a business owner or a fleet safety manager, or somebody with a vested interest in the management and the safety of the fleet. And we do our best to at least provide stacked ranked insights and let them make their own determinations.
Mhm.
Right. So that's a great way to cut through the noise of managing a business and be able to deliver actionable data insights on a silver platter, at least minimally stack rank it, and then allow them to make their own decisions for their own policies and their own company sustainability.
I mean, you're not doing this in the dark. The drivers are getting access to this data as well, so they can see what's going on and understand where they line up and what's happening and what other people are seeing. Like, this isn't you get called in. You get called into a meeting in the morning, right? And say, "Oh, Johnny, you had a really bad day yesterday on the road. We need to talk about it." I mean, there's a little bit of prompting or preemption, right? People being able to make changes on their own.
Well, yeah, I mean, and the funny thing is, not every telematics platform employs that, but that is something that I tell any customer I'm talking to do. It's the same concept, and it actually kind of happened with the passenger and consumer insurance. We have our insurance companies like Geico, State Farm, and Progressive, and they want you to download an app,
Hmm.
right? And that app on your phone is basically using the phone's accelerometer to see if you are speeding or hard braking or using your phone while you're driving. And it gives you your score. So you have the ability to at least know what you need to improve. Because in that particular case, if you improve your score, you're hoping that your insurance premiums come down,
Hmm.
right? Now take that to commercial fleets, and customers have the ability to do the same, to download an app to their driver's phones that will give them their driver score, give them the reasons why they are scored like that, to give them the ability to make a change. Maybe it's too many hard brakes because they're realizing they're distracted while they're driving.
Hmm.
Obviously, they might have the insights that they're speeding too much, and we can help provide those insights. But the coolest part of it is when you're stack ranked and you could see your score versus the other drivers, you're going to be more motivated with that gamification to want to improve that driver score,
Right.
because you do not want to go back to the office because everyone's
Hmm.
got your driver score, and be that person and
Yep.
be like, oh, look at you, Johnny or Sally. Look at your driver score. What are you doing to us? You're dragging us all down. It gets fun, but honestly, it's real. It's true. And 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 a lot of our customers that I personally work with, they'll put an incentive in place that the highest driver score that week will get a gift card. And there are certain telematics platforms out there that have already that technology built in. So not only can you see the driver's score, and you can share that score with the driver, you can gamify it, you could send them an electronic gift card to one of their favorite big box retailers, and there's their incentive to drive safer because they know they're going to win something at the end of the day. Heck, we have a customer at the end of the year for the driver with the top driver score wins a Ford F-150.
Yeah. That's motivating.
That's motivating. And as you can imagine, they have the highest driver scores I've ever seen in a large enterprise organization.
Okay. So now let's dig into this a little bit here. That company has obviously figured out that the cost of giving somebody a vehicle, right? Now, I mean, purchased, leased, I don't care what, right? There is a financial cost that they have figured out, and $40,000, $50,000, whatever it is, right? That the value to them is not worth it's not an equivalent thing, right? It's probably worth like multiples higher than whatever the prize is worth in this case.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, to your point, if you want to quantify that, say they soup this Ford F-150 up and this thing was a big $80,000, right? They probably had an ROI where they saved at least 15 to 20% on their commercial automotive insurance. So if you have 500 vehicles and your average commercial automotive is $3,000, and then you save 20% of that, right? Plus the operational efficiencies that you gained, plus the other jobs that you could have done because you employ the technology, right? Plus all the other benefits and bells and whistles associated with fuel savings. To your point, that was probably a fraction of the ROI, and they were very happy to award that level of prize to the safest driver in the fleet.
I mean, that's pretty awesome. What does rollout of this look like? I mean, how much downtime do you have per vehicle? What actually gets installed? They see something in the on the windscreen, right? So you have the cameras facing forward and backwards, right? But like, what other stuff can you collect out of the vehicle at this point and be able to report back in terms of just traditional fleet management IoT?
Yeah. So what we've seen in the industry is a lot of this technology is now self-installable, which has definitely increased its, penetration. Because a lot of times when you want to install something like this, you not only had to incur a monthly recurring cost for the software, but then you had a capital expenditure of buying the hardware and then having to pay an installer to install the technology. Now, we just power everything off of the OBD2 port or the engine diagnostics port under the steering column. And even the camera that gets installed with some sticky tape up on the windscreen can also be self-installed. So easy to deploy. And in our industry, in software as a service and the IoT, what's become expected is an operational expense business model, meaning that the vast majority of fleets who are adopting this technology do not have to pay anything out of pocket because that hardware is included in the service and it's amortized over the course of the term. So now you're eliminating barriers of entry, right? To go from a CapEx to an OpEx perspective and make it easy. And then now couple that with, to your point, some of the additional data points that are being captured. Immediately when you plug in a device like this, you're mobilizing the engine computer and you're getting year, make, model, odometer, diagnostic trouble codes. And that all comes in real time. Being a Bridgestone company, personally, one of the biggest and most exciting adventures that I've been on late have been around our ability to create tire pressure monitoring alerts. No. Because Max, I never realized how much a tire's pressure can affect not only the vehicle's performance, but also safety, right? An underinflated tire, as we all know, everyone always says, keep airing your tires because it's better for your fuel economy. Like, okay, that's easy. Is that enough for me to want to save 1% of my fuel? Admittedly, no. Right. So before I worked for a company owned by the largest tire company in the world, I just ignored the TPMS light. The moment I started working for a company who cared to provide that data, and then we figure out that an underinflated tire, when you're trying to stop short to avoid an accident, has a higher propensity to fail. And that accident might occur because someone wasn't monitoring tire pressure. One of the easiest things to maintain a vehicle with, right? So that to me was enlightening about the additional telemetry that's being captured in today's telematics platforms. And then, as we've been discussing, the advent of AI and being used in that video telematics device, that I can't even think about picking up my phone to answer a text or an email because I know that AI, it's watching, and I don't want that video recorded of me because I do demos of this platform every day, and sometimes I'm doing it of me. That's weird. Right? Slightly cathartic and slightly humorous, but also real. It's that even me, someone who advocates for this technology, can sometimes have a moment of weakness and check their phone while they're driving, right? And thankfully, there's something there keeping me accountable, right? And that's been the really cool aspect of some of the additional telemetry data points that have evolved in the video telematics and the fleet telematics industry.
So APG already had a fleet tracking solution. They had GPS trackers. They had, in theory, probably an ODB connection on these things, because that was like GPS and the OBD engine diagnostics were like the first wave of real IoT into transportation and fleet management. They install, they switch. Okay, so they realize it's not cutting it for them anymore, and they've got these other issues that they want to deal with, right? So insurance costs, accidents, safety issues, these other things that are going on, right? So that's causing pain, and it's causing enough pain. They say, okay, let's go. And what's the fix to this? Like, how do we actually fix this? They install your equipment. They get cameras. They get cameras in their fleet. They start tracking driver performance. Drivers start seeing their own scores. They start doing, stack ranking reports, and people can gamify and not be forget management, right? Peer pressure. You don't want to be on the bottom of the pile, right? Like, just period. What's the impact of that for them? 3 months, 6 months, 12 months later, as this rolls out and actually goes mainstream within their fleet.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me was when you ask a client, when you're trying to do an ROI or a case study of, what was the impact that we made. We knew we were going to make an impact on, fuel savings because we can measure engine idling and operational efficiency. Like that table stake stuff was expected. Mm-hmm. But when they mentioned that they had an insurance savings of like 15%, and that because they just basically said, that to be true. And we knew that occurred because, think about it. Why would your insurance costs go lower in a world where they're doing everything in their power to raise you? It's because you have become one of the safest fleets, and you're a fleet that an insurance company wants, because that's pure profit. Like, they're just collecting premium from you, and they're minimally paying out on claims. And the reason why, besides obviously their own ability to roll out their own safety culture, right, was the technology that was employed to support that. Because if your insurance savings went down, two things happen. One, the insurance company immediately deemed you a safer fleet than a fleet of your peers, because you just have this technology, and they have their own actuarial tables, right, who could figure that out. And they say, if you have GPS, if you have camera, if you are in this vertical with this many vehicles versus someone with the exact same vertical and number of vehicles, but doesn't have connected camera, not just like a one you can buy in Best Buy, but I'm talking about like the one that coaches the driver, you're going to get a savings. And then because you're now having less accidents, your premium is going to have the ability to get lower because you are a risk that you could shop yourself around now and find lower insurance premiums. That to me was eye opening and showed the real true power of this technology in action as a physical ROI. And probably that savings alone just pays for the solution itself on a monthly basis.
130 vehicles, $3,000 a vehicle, 15%. It's 60. It's almost $60,000 a year in savings, right? Just
Yeah.
on insurance premium. But that's scratching the surface, right? Because accidents mean deductibles for insurance coverage, right? Accidents mean injuries, right? So now you have, um, is your team injured? Can they work? Can they not work? Do you have now staffing issues, right? And capacity. Um, how long does it take to get a vehicle repaired? How long is a vehicle out of service? What's the impact on revenue of not having vehicles actually out in the world, right? Like there's a lot of second order effects that come out of this that aren't just like, oh, we save $60,000 a year on insurance. The number is actually probably staggeringly much higher, when you start tacking these other things onto it as well, right?
Yeah, and you're getting deep, and that is all true, and that's legit. And half of those savings were for the fleet. The other part that you were mentioning was actually for the insurance company,
Mm-hmm.
right? How much money that they saved by insuring a fleet who had this technology, so they don't have to have the 300, 400, 5,000, $1,000, $1 million claim, right? And then they're only going to probably cover you up to $1 million. And then if you're a business who has an umbrella policy, it flows on into that, right? So that cascading effect of I guess there's a huge economy around things getting broken, unfortunately, right? I mean, think about it. Once a car crashes, you got the tow truck coming in, getting yourself to the maintenance shop, getting yourself auto repaired, right?
Yeah.
And then all the actuarials at the insurance company, you're busy, like, and the underwriters and the claims guys, but you claim. And then you as a business, now you got to go in and pay your people to go replace that vehicle and get those jobs done because now you have a vehicle out of service. You're right. There is a huge cascading effect. And it's hard for me to quantify that without getting a little too crazy to a customer and the impact that these technologies have on the vertical at large, the fleet vertical. But it's astounding when you really look at it through your lens.
Well, some of this is pretty basic, right? If you dispatch a truck, whether it's for, a work order for, you're doing your service, right? You're going out and you're doing work, or you're doing a delivery. Now that truck is off the road. You have to then get somebody else to go out and either go to that truck and take all the inventory off of it and switch it and then go and complete the delivery. Or, you have to dispatch another crew to then go out and do the work that was originally done. And then you have this like cascading, like, stuff, right? And a lot of times we refer to it in terms of like, how much slack do you have to have in your, how much elasticity and slack do you have in your operations in order to deal with these events? Do you have capacity to then deal with all these, and it becomes a math problem, right? 100 trucks on the road, X% are going to have an issue each day. And then how much capacity and how many jobs can you take in a given day, and how, and so anything that you can do to increase your, to increase the utilization makes huge differences in terms of your financials of your business. Like I'm not, this isn't like, I'm not inventing anything new here. This isn't but it's just the way this works.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the end, with a business, especially field services, stuff happens, right? And a lot of it, unfortunately, is going to be out of your control, right? Many wise men who give these business like books for you to read always say, just focus on the things you can control, and driver safety and driver behavior modification and enforcing driver policies. And to your point, having a little bit of slack, you probably, as much as you want to be operationally efficient, want to have a spare vehicle.
Right.
You want to have a driver on call because stuff happens.
Yeah,
like
always.
You know what I mean?
Flat tires happen. We can't fix that.
But if you can minimize it, right, versus the stuff that's happening to your competition, and you're making that additional revenue and that additional income, and you're more reliable and getting more business as a result of that, better reliability because of technologies like a fleet management system, right? That's what you could control. That's what you can have a positive effect with. And that's how you can be differentiated. That's the way I look at it.
How quickly does driver behavior change?
Yeah. Um, in my experience, you immediately install this technology and it's like magic, right? It's magical. Like suddenly everyone stops texting and everyone's not speeding anymore. And the hard braking, baseline, if you had a baseline, it's low. Okay. But then something interesting happens, Max. About 3 months later, people start snapping into their old habits again, even though they had the technology installed. Wait, how could you have distracted driving increase, but you got the camera right there, right? How can all these hard brakes still occur? Or why is this vehicle not being properly maintained? No one's telling me to check engine lights on. Because what we find, and this is the biggest part, is once that honeymoon period is over, you got to take this technology and the data that you're capturing and really make it part of your operational cadence on a daily basis. Okay? Because it's a set it and forget it technology, and it's up to the management and it's up to the leaders to make sure that the data is not only being captured, but also being utilized to make business decisions.
Right.
So if I give you the best, most amazing GPS tracking solution ever that could eliminate the frequency and costs, whatever accident claims on that, and no one's watching it, and no one's doing anything about it,
right,
then no one's going to care. And that happens a lot. And it's no one's fault. No one's doing that on purpose. You didn't just invest this 3-year agreement with a software as a service company to capture this data and not use it. It's the nature of the beast. And that's why what I try to do is by assigning a customer a success manager, right? And having the success manager knock on the door once in a while and, hey, remember this? Did you know that your fuel efficiency is here and your tire pressure is there and these drivers are doing that? Oh, yeah. And then they can get that back into the behavior and the visibility, and then you'll have a better baseline to use this data to be more efficient and safer. That's the way I can positively affect that versus what you see when this data gets captured from the installation of a solution like this.
Somebody that's running a smaller fleet, if you've got 1,000 cars, 1,000 trucks, 500 trucks, 100 trucks, you're probably already there saying, okay, we need to have real fleet management. If you're a business, you've got 10 trucks, 5 trucks, 3 trucks, and somebody's listening to this and watching that and saying, I've only got 4 trucks. I'm too small for this. I don't need this. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I guess I would equate it to when I had my 3rd kid and me and my wife went from man-to-man coverage to a zone defense, right? Same thing with a commercial fleet. Like once you grow to the point where it's not your brother-in-law driving the vehicle and you're hiring people who are skilled technicians or skilled delivery people, and you didn't hire them to be drivers. They're not professional drivers, but they have a driver's license, okay? And they're driving a vehicle, it's not theirs, right? So when you factor that in, and no one's trying to do any kind of malfeasance like that. That's just human nature. It's like when you get into a rental car. If for some reason you just feel free to just hit the gas really hard, hit the brake, and who cares about the transmission? It's a rental. You know what I'm saying? So my advice to a small business owner is you first want to set the precedent. In the same way you're building credit, you also want to build your safety credit. And there's nothing better now because that's going to follow you around for 5 years. Any little accident that you get into, right, will follow you around on the LexisNexis data capture. It's the same way they capture your credit score. There's multiple platforms out there that measure you as a business, and safety is one of them, right? So for a very minimal investment, you could ensure the best possibility of operational efficiency and safety and accident mitigation, right? By paying an extra couple of bucks per vehicle per month. and the benefits exponentially scale from there. And to your point, where the average fleet size of Azuga personally is approximately like 30 vehicles, right? Of the 14,000 customers and 500,000 connected devices, average fleet size being 30 or so. But the higher the vehicle count, obviously the more heavier penetrated you're going to have with telematics.
Right.
Right. So coming down to the SMB, right? That is a lot of that's where the money is. That's where the bread and butter is. That is the most opportunity right now because, to your point, businesses who own and operate commercial fleets and they're less than 10 vehicles don't think that they need this, right? But our contention for sure is that there are too many benefits to ignore beyond the privacy infringement component of it. And our job is to deliver that return on investment and prepare them for being sustainable in the future.
How has fleet management evolved? And there was, I mean, you look at companies that are running fleets, right? And this is traditionally like blue collar work. You'd classify delivery drivers again, service technicians, these sorts of things, right? But now we're talking about like really sophisticated technology being deployed into these companies. And how does that change? And then again, we've talked a lot about things around efficiency, what COOs care about, or we talk about risk mitigation, what a general counsel cares about, or a CFO in terms of premium reduction or total cost exposure reduction, right? Like these, that becomes atypical in terms of what your a traditional fleet manager or fleet safety officer's role is within a company. And now you have information that's feeding, or decisions that are feeding into other people within that organization and other executive tiers, right? So how has this changed and evolved?
Yeah, and information overload for sure.
Yeah.
As you can imagine, the pressure for us to get out of the UI and just have a dashboard with some dots on it, and now have to visualize this data at the CFO or CEO level from a KPI perspective. So now having to look at the consumption of this data from both ends of the spectrum, both executive as well as operational, like that to me has been an evolution of the way that this data needs to be presented, to help, because of the impact that it has on so many different business units, right? And the fact that we want to be able to expose it. Because to your point, back in the day, this would just be, they would sign up for a solution like this, and just a fleet manager just used it, and they had a web portal, and they used it for job dispatching, and they had all this data, and they didn't do anything with it, right? And from a technological evolution, it's funny. I could talk to a fleet right now, and it would be a bunch of 2023 Ford F-150s or something like that. And I don't have to send them any hardware, because the vast majority of commercial vehicles made within the last couple of years already have telematics embedded in the vehicle.
Oh, cool.
Right? So they already have this technology installed, and you could capture location, you can capture speed, you could capture driver behavior, hard braking, sudden acceleration, idling, all that stuff. So just from a base like location and driver behavior perspective, this data is already being captured by platforms like OnStar, right? So what we're seeing now is the ability to tap into that data, because the OEMs will sell a platform provider of this technology like our company the data. So I could go to a customer now and look at their fleet and ask them for their year and make and models and VINs. And then these vehicles, they're a little older, we're gonna have to install some hardware to get the magic to happen. These vehicles, just give us the VIN, press this button, boom, aggregate all that data into one singular data stream, provide that on the portal. And then that's how we're dealing with this evolution in this fleet technology to make this data almost ubiquitous. Like, it's very hard not to be able to tap into the telematics data that could truly make an impact on a customer's fleet operations. So those are two evolution points that I've seen so far.
I love these conversations. I love this. I mean, because you see like technology, right? But really, technology is this like final step in the chain, right? And before it, there's always people in process. And like, what are you actually trying to do and get to that then you can enable and glean from technology? And you've made the point a few times here, which is like, okay, we're going to give you all this data, but you have to do something with it, right? Like, like use the data to make your business better. But now you have the data, so you can make decisions with it. And or like, hey, you've got a vehicle on the road with low tire pressure or check engine light, or the engine's about to blow up, do something about it before it costs you a lot of money, right? Like, again, it's like enablement. You're enabling people to actually do stuff, but they still have to look at it in order to make a decision or do something with it. The I think most I'll rephrase it. A lot of people have been in a rideshare vehicle which has a camera in it, right? I mean, is this normalizing at this point? I mean, it used to be really weird to sit in a car that had a camera watching you, but for me at least, it's kind of like, oh yeah, of course there's a camera in this car. Like, don't do anything weird.
I think it is normalizing. Yeah, to your point, the rideshare cameras, that's just a dash cam that's recording on an SD card, and it's there for the driver's protection in case someone, passenger, does anything stupid, or if that driver gets into an accident, and hopefully that accident was something that they could get
Yeah.
exonerated by. Like, that's the dash cam. And to your point, you don't think twice anymore. Like 10 years ago, when I started getting into yellow cabs and that technology was being implemented because of, unfortunately, the crime in New York City, it was like, wow, I guess I can't rob this cab driver. Not that I was going to, you know what I mean? But it was like, it was kind of shocking that someone's watching me right now. But when you look at the evolution of video in general, Max, Ring doorbell, like, basically, you can't even go up to someone's house to know that
Yeah.
you're getting fully recorded. I got
Yeah.
rings all around my house. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? You go to the corner, and there's video cameras everywhere on every street light in my neighborhood here in Monroe Township, New Jersey. Now, I don't know what they're doing with it, right? But they got the video of me, right? Um, and then you walk into any business, and there's the security cameras on right
Mm-hmm.
there. So why not? Why not have the video of the vehicle too? And OEMs like Tesla, like, that's one of the first vehicles that put an OEM camera that
Mm-hmm.
faces interior view. Now they use it for driver attentiveness for the
Yep.
self-driving solution,
Yep.
but you press a button, that just turns the video on and you can
Yep.
see what's going on inside. My feeling, Max, is in the next couple of years, exterior and interior cameras are going to be just as an OEM inclusion as much as GPS is in all consumer and commercial vehicles today, right? And then it's just, how do you use that data, and what other cool AI data is going to be out there to help protect us while we're out there on the road. And don't even get me started with AI and self-driving vehicles and the technology that's supporting that, and how that whole world is going to be a safer robot driving world, right? Really innovative and exciting times in the world of fleet telematics, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Final word. What is one thing that you wish more people knew about IoT and telematics or managing fleets?
One thing I wish every fleet knew about fleet IoT, that it is truly not just about the tracking. It's about transforming operations in real time. The data, it's already there. Like, the power is in using it to proactively prevent downtime, to coach your drivers, to reduce that risk, and to make decisions that ultimately going to grow your business, not just monitor it, right? Uh, this is not a fully privacy infringing technology. This is one of the most powerful and amazing solutions out there to maximize efficiency while making sure that your drivers of your vehicles are getting home safe to their families that night. That powerful 1-2 combo is the reason why you employ a GPS solution with video telematics, right? It's not a gotcha. It's, hey, driver of mine, great job. Thank you, Max. Apologize. I know you are a very diligent man, and to come in cold without having the case study, obviously you're a man who can think on his feet. And I think we did something pretty cool together today. So I appreciate you sticking with me. And next time we do this, I'll make sure you're a little bit more prepared.
Awesome. Chris, thank you very much. This is fantastic.